Hi, and welcome to ThreatTraq Essentials, where we take a look at some basic cybersecurity lessons that we can learn from this week's ThreatTraq stories. I'm here today with Matt Kaiser, who's on the show today. Welcome, Matt.
Hey, thanks, Don.
Let's talk about some of the stories that we went over today. So you brought us a story about a vulnerability in Citrix. So I guess the first thing we'd want to know is, what exactly is Citrix?
So most people know Citrix as a remote access solution. So you connect to the Citrix product, and from there you can connect to a whole bunch of other different applications that you have behind that. That's most of what people know Citrix for. They also have something called an ADC. It's like sort of like a load balancer for applications.
So there's a vulnerability. Tell me, what is a vulnerability? What is it capable of doing?
Okay, so the vulnerability itself is a path traversal vulnerability. So if you think about when you go to a website and you see that there are like the path itself is the whole long URL and all the different subdirectories and files.
And everything.
Exactly. Path traversal is a bug wherein you can trick the server into going up and out of the directories that you're already tunneled into, up and out, and then back into other places you shouldn't have access to. So if I were to say, if I'm supposed to go to like, att.com/folder1/folder2, if I say att.com/folder1/dot/name of a whole new folder, I shouldn't be able to access that, but sometimes there's a bug that lets you do that. So that's path traversal. But in this case, you've also got a remote code execution bug. So you can use that path traversal to reach into the server and hit commands you shouldn't be able to run and run them. So it all sort of adds up to you can run whatever command you want as an attacker.
So what is the protection against this at this point?
Well, right now there's no patch. There are some mitigations that Citrix has suggested people put into place. Primarily, there's a way to take that particular attack that's been identified and sort of define another answer to be given in that specific request. And that will mitigate it, but not completely fix the bug.
So let's suppose I'm not a server administrator. Is there a lesson here about what to do when a patch isn't available? Is there other times when software companies give advice when a patch isn't available?
Sure. So in this situation, what's been given is called a mitigation, which is sort of an incomplete solution, or at least a temporary solution to the problem. It also sort of suggests that a full patch is either forthcoming or won't be coming at all. And this is the best thing you can do in order to limit your exposure for the vulnerability.
And Tony brought us a story about a new malware called LiquorBot. Tell me, what is it?
So LiquorBot is a botnet that attacks SSH servers, breaks in, installs itself, and tries to do cryptocurrency mining. The cryptocurrency in this particular case is Monero, which is a little bit different from Bitcoin, has a couple more privacy features built into it to make it harder to trace who's spending it. So LiquorBot itself is very similar to Mirai, which I know we've talked about before on ThreatTraq. It does a lot of the same sorts of things, plus this cryptocurrency mining. It's also different in that it's written in the Go programming language as opposed to C, and Go has a couple things that are more advantageous if you're writing code. I think Mirai and LiquorBot are very much.
So how do people protect themselves against LiquorBot?
The best thing you can do is if you have a device that's an IoT device and it's running SSH, or a server somewhere running SSH, make sure that the password that you have set is not the default password. Because the way that this thing typically breaks in is it will find an SSH server, go to a long list of the ones that it knows are the defaults, and try all of them.
So what would make a good password, or how do you develop a strong password?
Something that is long, has a number of different types of characters, so uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and symbols. Something that does not contain dictionary words. Another option if you're using SSH on the internet is to set up key-based authentication, which means that instead of typing in a password, you'll exchange cryptographic keys, which is much, much harder to break into, because then you have to either already have that key or spend a much more time trying to negotiate that. And it's basically the best of breed way to leave SSH open on the internet.
And lastly, Joe brought us a story. It was a very big one about a story that was developing today, even across the days we were shooting, about a Microsoft vulnerability. Tell me about that.
Well, it's actually several vulnerabilities. So today is Patch Tuesday, which is the typical time that Microsoft will put out patches, and it always seems to be a Tuesday. But these are some very anticipated patches. Krebs on Security, that's a very well-known security news site, has been sort of hyping this up as the big bug. And it turns out that the patch includes several different types of patches. One is for a critical vulnerability in the Microsoft cryptographic API that has to do with signing certificates.
So that's how you trust.
Right. So if you use cryptographic signing, what you can say is definitively that something is basically that it came from where it came from, or it's owned by who it's owned by. For example, you can use cryptographic signing to say, this is my program, I wrote it, and I signed it on this day with this thing, and someone else can go and validate that, yes, that is cryptographically provably true. Except that this bug breaks that. So now that there's a way for someone to forge that same information, until this is patched, you can't use this system to trust anything that's been signed that it's the program it says it is. Or that you've got a website you're visiting, and typically when you go and you see, everyone says to look for the little green lock, and there's information in that certificate that says, I am x.com, this is the person who provided my certificate on this date, and it's good until this amount of time. That is also broken if you're using those same crypto APIs to validate that information.
So that's a very big vulnerability.
It's huge. Yeah, this is one of the bugs you absolutely should patch as soon as you possibly can.
And there's a patch available.
There is a patch available. There's also bugs in remote desktop protocol that are fixed by this patch, remote code execution. If we didn't already have the crypto bug, I'd say this was the big bug of the month. But the crypto one is just, it's far too big. It's huge.
So who does this affect?
This affects everybody. I mean, this affects anybody who is running a Windows 10 system of certain versions, and there are a number of people who have put out, Microsoft has the details, DHS. You can find the list of affected versions of Windows, but basically if you're running Windows 10, you're affected by at least the first bug. And if you're running Windows 7 and you have RDP open, you're probably affected by the second bug.
So you want to patch right away?
I think you absolutely have to patch right away, because the number of ways in which this can be exploited, and the number of creative ways we're probably going to see in the next couple of weeks this thing's going to be exploited, your best bet is not to try and handle all the different things that spring out of this. Your best bet is to patch the core issue.
Always good advice. Well, thanks for being on the show, Matt, and thank you for watching. As always, please like and subscribe to our program below. And if you want to take a deeper dive into any of these stories, just click on the playlist below and you can learn more about them. We'll see you next time.